Hey guys, today we'll be learning about exceptions in C#. So this is a continuation of the video series. So an exception is an unexpected error that happens while the program is running. If an exception is not handled by the program will abruptly halt, so an exception causes the program to abruptly halt if it's not handled. So an exception is an unexpected error that occurs while the program is running, causing the program to halt. If it is not dealt with, exceptions are usually caused by reasons that are beyond the coder's control. So for example, if you try to divide by 0 or something, that should be an exception. If you try to use an int when you're supposed to use a string, that'll cause an exception, so a type exception. So we'll go over the names for that and stuff, the actual names. So if you enter a number into a text box, such as an int or a decimal or a double, the program uses the program will throw an exception. So let's just I'll show you guys how to handle an exception. So you have to use a try and catch block. It's exactly like Java. So you may see an exception window in your IDE. So where's the exception window? Or at least where will the errors show up? So you'll see it down here when you run. There's a tab for problems here, I think. But if you have a run tab or something, you should see. Right now we just have some warnings. Excuse me, this is just generated code, but it already has warnings. So these warnings are different than exceptions. These are warnings, not exceptions. So an exception or an error will usually be in red. It'll have like a stop sign on it or something, or a red dot. So yellow is just a warning, kind of like a light, like a traffic light. So red is stop, or is it bad? I guess it just represents stop, and then yellow's like come to a stop if you can, or caution, whatever. So it's just like a warning. So it's the same idea. So you can just ignore these. I don't really look at warnings that often. I just look at the errors, but probably if you're doing a bigger project or an app or whatever, you'll have to look at all the warnings and everything. I think the biggest app I ever made was a web browser. That was for a class. There is an app that I want to make, but yeah, so when you do that, you have to check out all the warnings. And I will try to include that, how to make the web browser app in Android sometime soon. Okay, so I'll show you guys how to handle the exceptions. So to handle an exception, so what is exception handling? So exception handling is just writing code that responds to exceptions when they are thrown and prevents the program from abruptly crashing. So you call them handlers, so you have to handle the exception if they occur. So they use a try catch statement. It's like exactly the same thing as Java. It seems like C# is based off Java completely almost. So there are different ways to write try catch statements. We'll do over the course of the series, we'll do different ways. We may not use them all the time, but you should use them if you're coding something in C#. You want to make sure there's no exceptions, and if there are, if there are exceptions and you want to handle them. So it just looks like this. I'll just go down here. So it just I'll just comment it out. So we have try. So we'll have try here, and then you just open brackets like this. And here you write your exception handling code. Actually, no, I lied. This is where you put the code that might throw an exception. So this is just where you write normal code. So down here is where you catch and handle the exception. So it just underneath, just like this. So just catch. And then you just have, usually you tell it what you want to catch, like, I want to catch a, this might not be the exact correct syntax, we'll look at it. Something like this. Like this, and then you just go like, you just write your exception handling code here. So we'll do that in a sec, that's just the general format. So yeah, we'll look at that right now. Actually, maybe I'll just keep that up. Let's just call it exception because I'm not sure what the exact C# name is, I forgot. So we'll have, but this basically this, you just name your exception object, E, exception, whatever. It's usually E. You can name it an exception, you can name it E, obj, whatever you want. Exception, obj, whatever. Just make sure that you know that it's an exception object. We'll talk about objects later on as well. So we have a try reserved word here. So it's called a try block. So one or more statements inside a try block can potentially throw an exception. So after the try block we have a catch clause or catch block. So a catch clause is followed by a group of one or more statements enclosed inside a set of curly brackets. So it's also known as a catch block or catch clause, try block or try clause, whatever. So the whole thing is called a try catch statement or a try catch block, try catch clause, whatever. When a try catch statement executes, the statements in the try block are executed in the order they appear. If the statement in the try block throws an exception, the program execution transfers to the catch clause and executes the statements in the catch block. If all the statements in the try block execute with no exception, the catch block is skipped. So you probably will get tested on that if you're taking that in class. 100% you'll get tested on it. I think there might be a finally. Is there a finally block in C#? Okay, we'll get to that. If there is, we'll get to it after, so don't worry about that for now. So we'll just, sorry if I'm being too quiet, so we'll just move on to, that's pretty much all the info. We'll just look at an example. So we have, so in the fuel economy app, which I already closed. Okay, so let's see. So let me try to open that one, the one we just did. Might take a sec to load, because I'm recording, that kind of slows it down. Was this it? This was it, okay. Form1.cs. Okay, this is what we need here. So this is from the last tutorial, where we made the number, we practiced the concepts to string parse, and we made the converter app, the fuel economy one. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add some try and catch blocks. So calculate button, so the try block can go here. You can also put it at the top of the class, I think under the class, or the namespace, perhaps one or the other. So you can try that. It should work. We'll do an example of that later on. Right now we'll just handle we'll handle this method, exception handle this method basically. So here we'll have it, the try block, it just goes at the top like this. Okay, so then it generated some stuff here automatically. Okay, console.writeLine. That's how you print, right? Okay. Oh, what happened there? It's automatically formatting some stuff for me, so that's not what I wanted. Okay, so what we're going to do is here, we're just going to take that bracket, move it down here. Okay, so that's it. That's pretty much it. You have to indent everything. Well, you don't have to, but to keep the kind of coding format, you'd want to probably indent it. Some people do their brackets like they put it here instead. I don't do that. I go under. So if you go beside, feel free to do whatever you want. Okay, so we have so all we have to do now so this catch, I don't think it catches anything specific, it just catches everything. Basically we just go like this, catch. So we can just go like this, message box. This is just one example. All this is just going to do is just show a dialog box or message box and just tell you that invalid data was entered. Should be fine. So I think sometimes you can put different so this is a example of an exception, I believe, in C#, so you could name it something. I believe you have to include an exception object name. We'll do that in 1 sec here. Let me just get the exact syntax for you guys. So just more on this. We'll come back to exception objects and the actual names for them and all that. So when you write a try-catch statement, you put all the code that might throw an exception inside the try block. We have that. So in this case, we put it in the event handler. We put all the code within a try block, and then within the same event handler, we put the catch underneath. So just remember that. It can be a little confusing. Just try to remember it just goes directly underneath. Okay, so let's continue on here. So let's just say we had an exception. This wasn't, somewhere here we had a type mismatch or something. If when we wanted to use when we were supposed to use an int, instead we used a string, that would have caused an exception. In this case, the program would have stopped, and the dialog box would have shown invalid data was entered. Okay, so there's a way to display an exception's default error message. So when an exception, so when an exception is thrown, an object known as an exception object is created in memory. The exception object has various properties that contain data about the exception. So this is like, so it's almost exactly the same as Java. So you just create an exception object. So what we're going to do here. So basically, the exception object has various properties that contain data about the exception. When you write a catch clause, you can optionally assign a name to the exception object, as shown, which I'll show you guys here. So here we could go catch exception E. Do need to put X here? Sorry. Let me just go with EX. Can you not name it E? I'm just wondering, I don't think it likes E. You already have an E. Oh, we already have an E, that's why. Okay. That's why. Let's just go with E. EXE. Okay, that's why. So that's why. We already have an E. That's why it won't let me use E again, I believe. Alright, so it's telling me that there's already an E being used in the current scope or parent. So we can't call it E because there's an E up here. So I forgot, by default, Microsoft has the event args object named E, so here we could just go with EX. Alright, so then in that case it's exactly like Java, you just have your exception name here. That's what I thought, so you just whatever exception you're trying to handle, you can name it, or you can catch it. You can catch it like the way we did, or you can catch it like this. This will give you the default exception. This way will give you the default exception error message. So let's just talk about this. So an exception is thrown, an object known as just woke up here. So we have when an exception is thrown, an object known as an exception object is created in memory. The exception object has various properties that contain data about the exception. So when you write a catch clause, you can optionally assign a name to the exception object, as we just did. We named it EX, that's the name of the exception object. We couldn't name it E because there's already an E for the event args object. You can name it whatever you want, exe. You could have named it exception with a lowercase e. I probably would have named it that if it's possible. Should be possible, so yeah, so just name it whatever you want. You could have went with e. What did I do there? Oops. You could have went with exobj, exception object. You could have written the whole word and then put obj, or put an object, the whole word object. Whatever you want, whatever you like. Just go whatever you want. Something you can remember. And then look, that another coder could understand as well. Or a professor, whatever. Don't go like exception and then you suck or something like that. Wouldn't probably, no one would really understand that. Your professor might even get upset about that, so just go with something that works. Okay, so we have, so basically the expression that appears inside the parentheses specifies that we are assigning the name ex to the exception object. So we could have named it whatever you want, basically. We could have named ex anything, once again. It's not a reserved word. We can name these. It's an object name, so we could have named it anything we want. You can think of it like a variable name instead. It's an object type. So it's like miles here. We could have called miles like fruit or whatever. So yeah, you can name those whatever you want. So inside the catch block in this case, we can use the name, the object name ex to access the exception object's properties. So an exception has properties. You can get the print stack trace. You can get the stack trace. You could probably get the stack trace somehow. You can get the message, the exception message. There's other things you can get. So one of these properties is the message property, which contains the exception's default error message. So whatever the exception may be, it'll automatically get that for you. So one of these is the message property, which contains the exception's default error message. So we'll do an example here how to show how to do that. Alright, so we can go messagebox.show here. Instead of creating our own message here, we could do that, or we could do this, so I'll just delete that. This is probably the better way to do it, so we'll just go messagebox.show. So we could show that here, ex.message. There should have, no parentheses, okay. So ex.mess, I don't think it would even, does it cause an error if I do this? Okay, so there's no parentheses on this for some reason. So we have, that's just the way it is in C#, so just ex.message, there's no parentheses. In Java, I think it's get message and there's parentheses. It's almost 100% the same. We'll talk about this more later on, but this just prints out pretty much the message from whatever exception is raised. So if it's like a number format or something error, it'll tell you number format error, whatever line and why. Pretty much why is because it's a number error, something like that, exception. Alright, so that'll probably conclude this part of the series, or the tutorial. So in the next one we'll go over the lab, doing a GUI with exceptions, probably another GUI. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the tutorial, you can like and subscribe to the channel for more programming and investing tutorials if you'd like to support the channel. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.